Hey there, everyone. And now I am joined by Cam and David to talk about some exciting new features that are going to be coming to Company of Heroes 3 in our Coral Viper 1.60 update. Cam, David, it's great to have you both here. How you doing?
Doing good. How
Great.
are you doing, John?
I'm always peachy, but it's good to see you both back here. I know we've been working really hard on some long requested features that players have been really looking forward to. David, I hear that you make missions, so
I
I'm
do.
curious if you can share with us today what you've been working on.
Yeah, I'm one of the mission designers here, and um, one of the things that we've been working on is a way for players to go back and play the missions from the campaign map without having to go through the entire campaign map.
Hmm.
So we're adding in a mission select system. And what that's going to let players do is there's going to be a new option in the single player menu, and you're going to be able to go through and select any of the missions that are playable in either the Italian dynamic campaign or the North African operation.
Okay, very cool. I know our sort of big set piece missions are often fan favorites, so I'm excited for us to roll this out, as I know it's something players have wanted to see for a while. So you said you can kind of select missions right away. You don't necessarily have to play through the campaign.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as the feature is added to the game, all of the missions will just be available to players. We've organized it so it kind of, you start with Operation Husky, and the last one on the list is the Winter Line, so you can kind of play through them in order. Um, and once you select one of the missions, or at least for the Italian campaign, you'll decide whether or not you want to play as either the British or the Americans. And then once you're in the game, we've kind of added the abilities and stuff that you might unlock during the normal progression of the Italian dynamic campaign. So in the earlier missions, you have access to maybe just a single call in or a couple of passive abilities. But then as you get to the later missions, Anzio, Ortona, the Winter Line, like I said before, you're going to have lots of call-ins and abilities and some of the passives and stuff that are available in the dynamic campaign. We just kind of apply them to these missions. So there is this sense of progression, I guess, as you're going through all of the missions.
Okay, so if I was able to choose a faction or use one of my British or American companies on the campaign map, I can now make that choice before I jump into one of these missions, and you'll just give me a company and certain abilities already.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of set up for you. You just get to select the mission you want to play. You select the faction you want to play as. You also get to select the difficulty
Mm.
as well. So you choose whether you want to play anything from easy to expert, and then you just hop in and play. It's just going to be a more kind of simple and straightforward way to just jump in and start playing the mission content if that's just what you feel like doing, going back and playing some of your favorite missions and stuff.
Awesome. Well, glad to hear that. I'm going to throw a question to both of you. Cam, maybe you first. What's your favorite mission from either the dynamic
And
campaign
is it one of mine?
or the North African operation? Yeah. Which one's your favorite? Which one are you going to jump into first once we roll out Mission Select?
I am a big fan of Potenza. I just love how that mission starts. You're kind of thrown right into the action. And then
That's a fun one.
yeah, it is also one of David's missions. And then you progress through up the hill and through the city. And it's just got some really cool level design to it, some cool sights and visuals. So, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
cool.
thank you, Cam. I appreciate that.
What about you, David? And you can't pick one of yours.
Fine. I actually I really like there's a couple of the raid missions that I really like, and they're kind of the little smaller pop-up missions. There's um oh god, I was about to call it River Crossing Raid, but that's not what it's called in in game. That's what it's called like on the dev side. But yeah, it's one of the missions where you go in, you just like have to run through as quick as you can and destroy stuff.
Mhm.
And I always really love Monte Cassino. It is a fun, real, just like set piece
Yeah.
mission. You just fight your way up that big mountain kind of face and stuff. So that one of those two, I think, are the ones that I would jump into.
Very cool. Very cool. So again, like I said, I know players have wanted this capability to go back and check out some of their favorite missions without having to replay an entire campaign. So I'm glad that we're finally able to roll that out. But David, maybe you can tell us about some of the incentives to that players can earn as they go through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we were looking for is to add kind of more ways for single player players to gain merit and to interact with our daily and weekly challenges. So, what we're doing is we are adding an additional daily challenge for 30 merit that's just going to ask you to play one of the missions, which now that we have the mission select, you can just go in and select the indicated mission. So, you're actually going to be able to get a little bit more merit every day.
Okay.
And so we're also going to take one of the weekly challenges, because there's usually 3 weekly challenges. We're going to take one of those slots and replace it with a single player, play a single player mission on expert thing. And you have all week to do that. In addition to all that, we're kind of rebalanced some of the merit rewards that you're given for the rest of the weeklies. So the other 2 non-single player weekly challenges are going to be increased to 400 merit instead of 250. So if you don't want to play single player, although why wouldn't you want to? You can still be gaining quite a bit of merit if you stick to multiplayer only. So we increased those ones. But in general, overall, if you do complete both single player and multiplayer challenges, you're going to be gaining more merit per week than previously.
Very
So
cool.
there's just going to be more merit on the table for everybody to get.
Very cool. Very cool. So Cam, I think that's a good point for us to segue to what you've been working on, because I know player progression is something that we're thinking a lot about. So yeah, can you tell us about the feature that you've been busy implementing?
Yeah, so there's a new feature we're adding called Accolades, and this adds a bit more progression into the game. They look very similar to challenges, but there's a few key differences.
Mhm.
One is that they never expire. You can work on them for a bit, you can leave, come back, and they're still there. And then the other difference is that they you complete them in order from 1 to 10 in a series. So there's one for every faction, and as you can work on them, it gives you something to work towards a little bit longer term.
Okay, cool. So I guess I'm kind of curious what types of accolades or challenges we're talking about for each faction. If we've got 10 of them, I imagine it'll still take us a little bit of time to work through those.
Yeah, so they're all over the place. The idea was that many of them could be completed in single player or in multiplayer or in skirmish, any mode. Some of them are specific to skirmish and multiplayer, where they ask you to complete or get the BAR upgrades by a certain time. Some of them are to get a certain number of kills with certain units, and then some of them are to play specific missions. But yeah, I think many of the ones that ask you to kill a certain amount of units, you could do that in single player, you could do that in multiplayer.
Mhm.
It's totally up to you.
Okay, so I guess the I guess one of the bigger goals behind the accolade system is to uh, incentivize players playing maybe a faction that they're not used to, or they don't necessarily play all the time, or to teach some of the strategies that might be common with that faction.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're jumping into the game for the first time, it'll teach the flavor of each faction. If you're playing a new faction that you haven't played very much, it'll encourage you to use certain mechanics and certain parts of the faction that we think is ideal and
Okay.
cool.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm kind of curious what kind of work went into implementing the accolades, Cam. Like what was sort of your process or your thought process when you're thinking about like, okay, how do we get players engaging with these factions, and how do we design these accolades to sort of teach these things to players, or to get players to play in new and interesting ways?
Yeah, so we know we wanted it to be something that you work at longer term,
Mhm.
but it was really bringing in the whole team and making sure that the challenges or the accolades that you're working at are interesting to do. That some of them are grindy, but not too grindy. Some of them are easy one-offs that are fun to do and encourage you to play a certain way. But it's really bringing in the whole team and making sure that every designer can throw out ideas, and then uh, making sure that we're hooking up interesting rewards as well, so that it's not just challenges for the sake of challenges, but many of these will give you rewards for your player profile, things like titles, as well as some new merit rewards as well.
Okay, very cool. I was about to ask, what's in it for me? So it's good to hear that we can earn some stuff by going through these accolades. Are there any sort of standout favorite accolades that you worked on?
I'm a huge fan of there's one for the Africa Corps that gets you to uh, get a certain amount of kills with recovered vehicles. So you have to recover the vehicles and then get a certain amount of kills with it, which I think is pretty fun.
Okay, sounds a little bit challenging. What about you, David? Have you engaged with any of the accolades yet? Do you have you seen any that you're like, oh yeah, that one's spicy. I like that one.
There are ones that ask you to play certain missions. I think there is one that asks you to play Saving Private Norton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that little mission. That's a fun little mission. So,
Awesome, very cool. Well, thank you both for joining me today. We'll keep it short and sweet. I'm very excited to see Mission Select and the accolade system roll out in Coral Viper. So thank you for all your work on that, and we'll move on to the next segment. Thanks so much, Cam, and thank you, David.
thanks
you,
for
Jim.
having us.
In addition to these changes, we have several other improvements coming to Coral Viper for those that love our missions or playing solo or co-op with friends. With Mission Select, players will also be able to track the hardest difficulty used to complete a mission along with their fastest completion time. For our co-op players, you'll now be able to change your difficulty selection before queuing for a co-op versus AI match, meaning you have greater control over your comp stomps in auto match. Going hand in hand with this, we've also made several changes to our AI to make them feel more competent and more efficient in combat. Vehicles will now be smarter about their positioning and their movement, meaning they'll take safer approaches to fights and use their range to their advantage. Infantry will just be better at recurring team weapons, and anti-tank guns will be smarter about fighting at a distance and not putting themselves in harm's way.